Hi, and welcome back to a brand new year, 2025. And we're kicking off this year with another great podcast for you. It is going to be Healthcare Simplified with Manpreet Richter. Welcome along to this first show of 2025, where we're unpacking the insurance premium rates that have been rising. What are the issues behind it? Let's talk about that. Let's find out as much as we can. Today, I have got three fantastic guests in the studios today. I've been studying so hard to talk to Mark Odell, who is the president or CEO of the Life Insurance Association of Malaysia. Happy New Year and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Right. And over on the other side, I have with me Dato Indrani Thuraisingham, who's the legal advisor from the Federation of Consumer Association, FOMCA, right here in Malaysia. And closer to me on my left here, we've got YB Tze Tzin, all the way from Bayan. And he has been talking quite a lot about this, unpacking this because a lot of constituents, a lot of people have been reaching out to you. The same with FOMCA over there. But Mark, my first question is to you. These rates, they've gone up over the past couple of years. What's really fueling this? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about,
Sure.
What's happening with that? Why is it going up so high?
Sure. It's not straightforward. There are many factors.
Absolutely.
I'd like to break them down into two categories: ones that we can not really control much,
Okay.
and ones that we can at least influence
All right.
and control. Right. The ones we can't control are things that you already know, like advances in medical treatment.
Okay.
They come out, they're more expensive until they become widely adopted. Imported equipment, supplies, and medicine. Malaysia imports the large amount of their consumables overseas in US dollar. So when the ringgit depreciates, those prices go up. And the ringgit has depreciated on average about 4% a year since 2012.
Okay.
So that's a big impact. High prevalence of NCDs.
All right.
That has a long-term effect on hospitalizations, and an aging population.
Okay.
Those are things that we really can't really control very
All right.
much, right?
Sure.
And that also points to the fact that there is an underlying base amount of medical cost inflation that we will never escape from,
Okay.
right? But then there are things that are within our influence, right?
Sure.
Some are on the insurance side, some are on the provider side, some are on the patient side,
Okay.
right? The benefit design. Okay, one of the worst things that, in hindsight, one of the worst things that the insurance industry's done is come up with 100% payment with a cashless card.
Okay. All right.
Because it makes it so easy to think that I pay my premium and then I can consume as much as I want to at the hospital. And you don't blame them, actually. I've been in the position to go into a hospital and I get my card and I think, I don't think of the bill, right? I think of what care I'm going to get. And it's often referred to as the buffet syndrome.
Right.
But it really just points to the fact that if the insurance company's paying 100% and nothing's coming out of my pocket, I don't have an interest in the bill.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a plan design, and that's the insurers are the ones who have to take ownership of that,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Right. Prior to that, there was reimbursement plans were common. You pay first and you get reimbursed,
Okay.
right? Then there's the pricing cycle.
Okay.
We were alluding to it earlier. When a company reprices, they're going to lose about 10 to 12% of their healthy insureds.
Okay.
This is because every company and every cohort they have are at a different point in time, and some may reprice next year, some may not reprice next year.
Okay.
If I'm healthy and I am getting a significant rate increase, I may shop around.
Right.
And my experience as a former CEO was I'll lose 10 to 12% of my business.
Okay.
So what happens is I want to try to retain as much of that business as possible. So I come up with some bells and whistles to try to attract those people to stay with me, right?
Right.
But I only offer that to the healthy lives, those that have not used the plan.
Sure.
And then that plan becomes the go-forward plan. And then they close the old block to new business. And that closing that old block to new business is a bit of a death spiral for that old block, because that old block will do nothing but age and get worse in claims experience.
Right.
And so that leads to medical inflation for a certain segment, right?
Right.
But eventually will be all of us. eventually will be all of us. Then there's lack of information.
Right.
People, well, if they don't have to pay, they're not that interested, but there's no published correlation between cost and outcome.
Right.
And how difficult it is to get to find a doctor. You ask your friends, you ask your doctors that you know. I had shoulder surgery 2 years ago. I went to 4 different doctors before I decided on which doctor. And without proper information, people are left to judge the hospital, in this case, a provider, based on how beautiful their amenities are,
Right.
which is far from perfect. And then there's waste, fraud, and abuse.
Okay.
I chat a little bit about abuse.
Okay.
Okay, there's a lot of unnecessary diagnostics done for insured patients.
Yeah.
I give you some stories, some that are told to me secondhand, and some that have happened to me personally. Right.
Okay.
I have a friend who he's a doctor, but he's not a surgeon. But his father needed an appendectomy, and he said to me, "You can diagnose an appendectomy by blood, urine, and a physical exam." But yet, because this was an insured patient, or it's implied because he was an insured patient, that they did an MRI and a scope, another 10,000 ringgit,
Right.
unnecessary. Abuse. I had arthritis in my thumbs.
Right.
Went to a very famous private orthopedic, and he said to me, and I'm still amazed that I was a CEO of an insurance company in Malaysia, and he said to me, "I want to give you this treatment that's not covered under your insurance. It's called protein-rich plasma. And but what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge you 10 times as much for hyaluronic acid, which is covered under your policy, and give you the PRP for free." And let me tell you, this is not exceptional stories.
Right.
These stories happen all the time. And so there's an element of abuse and an element of taking as big a bite as a cherry of an insured patient.
Sure.
And that also leads to overconsumption.
Okay.
So those are the main areas I'd say contribute to inflation.
I mean, good points that you've brought up. I mean, design, maybe flaws. If I'm stretching it a little bit, design flaws there. But I'm going to go to Sim right now, because these things that Mark's just talked about really affect real people who need real help, who in their time of vulnerability and sickness and illness and in pain, they go to a private facility and they seek this help. There's that trust factor, right? They go in and expect, I can trust my doctor, I can trust my great, big, wonderful looking hospital, with all the frills going in there. And so I expect that this is a top-notch facility. And we see that abuse happening, and that has raised the rates for everyone, and I'm sure you have got so many anecdotes and stories about what has happened. What are your views on what Mark just said about that? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good day to everyone. Manvir, I think I want to start with my personal story.
Okay.
Okay, we all like middle class, living in cities and in Malaysia. We were told from little, buy an insurance. Protect yourself for the future. Prepare yourself for the future. So like me, like everyone else, we started buying the insurance maybe just after working. Yeah, you started entering the workforce, you buy insurance. I bought one. Okay, and then after that, you trusted your friend.
Right.
They asked you to sign here. They discussed a bit. They said, "You'll find this is very cheap because you are young. You should buy now." So we bought, and then after a few years, they come back and say, "Hey, why not you buy this?" So we bought the second one without looking at the details. And then you sometimes, there's a new product, investment link. It's good, good for you. You can protect. You pay a little bit more, but you can protect yourself until you're 80 years old.
Right.
Excellent. I buy another one. So after a few times, I tell you, I bought about 6 to 7 insurance.
6 to 7
6 to
policies.
7.
Okay.
Then one day I met a friend. He said, "Why?" A close friend. He's also a very senior insurance agent. He said, "Why are you buying so many? Let me look at it." And then he said, "Oh, this is what they call Batinde. This is actually
Overlapping.
overlapping.
Oh,
So okay, no need this, no need this. So he helped me to rearrange. I said, okay. So I save a lot of cost.
all right.
So a lot of Malaysians, we are buying insurance, a lot of insurance sometimes because being, persuaded by friends. So I think insurance, number one, I find medical insurance and health insurance, there are too many products, very confusing. The agents are selling,
Right.
and then sometimes you don't know what you're entering. And I want to tell you the real story. When I started talking about insurance and also medical, what you call medical inflation and the private hospital charges, a lot of people wrote to us.
Okay.
So one of the cases is that he has been paying loyally to a company 15, 20 years. After he retired, he thought that he is protected. But suddenly, his insurance gone up so much,
Okay.
about 150%. So he, being a retiree, he cannot pay for it. He cannot afford it. So he has to give up. And he's a cancer patient. So he has to face his cancer alone to the government hospitals, although he has been paying 20 years for insurance. This is not a protection that he expected. He has been paying,
Right.
loyally. So I think this industry, insurance industry, must be reformed. It's not right. It's morally wrong to have that kind of treatment to people who supported the entire the industry. And I hold Bank Negara accountable.
Okay.
Because Bank Negara, being a regulator, they must understand the practices, the good and bad and the ugly. Okay, we want a insurance ecosystem, a healthcare ecosystem, including the insurance company, that is sustainable and it protects. We go back to the basic. The objective of insurance company is to give protection when it's needed. It's not about selling. It's not about making, sorry to say, excessive profiteering. It's not for people to make big money. It should be go back to the basic where provide health insurance coverage for the needy. So that's why I think I want to start by saying that go back to the basic.
Right.
Insurance company, go back to your basics. Don't try to learn from America. Okay, it's an absolute bad example. Come back to Malaysia. Malaysia, you make money. A lot of people trusted you. They trusted you. Go back and do the service to them.
Right.
This is what we request. Second, we ask Bank Negara to wake up and regulate. If you're a regulator, you must do your work as a regulator. Don't sleep on the job. Yeah, do your job diligently and make sure that the whole ecosystem is sustainable for the future.
Absolutely, very good points that you made. And Indrani, if I may, I mean, FOMCA, Federation of Consumers Association, I'm sure you guys have also been inundated with a lot of this, and that's part of the reason why you're here. You've got that vast experience of a gamut of people coming to you with a huge amount of problems. But this one has been something that you guys have got lots of people calling in and contacting you. What have been the main things that they are trying to understand about this rise?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Banwir. And thank you for also inviting us here. Because a lot of the time, I would say that, patients or consumers are always left out in all these policy-making decisions.
Right.
And I'm so glad that, you brought us in, into this conversation. I do agree with Sim, and he took the words out from my mouth, because at the end of the day, yes, it is for profit. The insurance industry is for profit. The private hospitals are for profit, but you cannot make just purely commercial decisions because you are talking about health of the citizens. You're talking about the health of the people. So there has to be a balance, right? And I do agree that to a certain extent, because both regulators, when you talk about the private hospitals, it's the Ministry of Health. And when you talk about the insurance industry, it's Bank Negara, and sometimes even the Ministry of Finance comes in, but they are all working in silos.
Right.
And always then it's the consumer interest that falls within these gaps.
Absolutely.
You know, so yes, private hospitals will say, oh yes, we are coming in with new innovations, we're coming in with new patented drugs and all that. But if you look at the causes of medical inflation, yeah, it's not only about the about as what Mark talked about the aging and all the other issues, but it's also talking about the treatments, the costs when you're talking about surgeries, yeah, when you talk about doctors' fees, that's the only thing that's regulated, you know,
Yep.
that's the only thing.
Yes.
But when you talk about the treatment at the hospitals, yeah, it's not regulated. When you talk about prices of medication, we don't know what are the prices that the pharmaceutical industry is actually acquiring these medicines from overseas. Like,
Sure.
yes, he said inflation, that's one, or in terms of currency exchange. But what is the price? We may know the retail, at
Right.
what price they're selling,
Yeah.
but we don't know what price they're actually procuring it.
Right.
Where is the transparency in that?
Okay.
You know, so in terms of abuse, again, there's both sides of the story.
Right.
Sometimes there's some consumers, because they feel I'm paying so much for my insurance, you know, so I want to get a proper care. Maybe I come once a year and I have a particular ailment, so I want to get proper care. So again, it has to be regulated to a certain extent. But
Okay.
nowadays, MOH doesn't do that.
Yep.
BNM doesn't regulate the
Yeah.
caps. They don't put any caps in that sense. There's no
Right.
caps. So in that sense, then that's why you get this high premium rates.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, consumers are coming to us. They are saying that from 300 ringgit medical premiums a month, my premium now is 800, and
Right.
this is only for one person's
Exactly.
coverage. And they said, I've got a family of 4 or 5. I can't afford this. And then sometimes the investment linked medical insurance premiums, they say, the payout is about 10 million. Who needs 10 million?
Exactly. Yeah.
But then because it's so high,
Yeah.
your premiums are also very high. So where is the cap?
Right.
And I think this is where we feel that, there has to be a sole agency that looks after this. You
Right.
can't have MOH looking after the private hospitals. You can't have BNM just looking at the insurance. There has to be a proper oversight body
Right.
that looks holistically, like a task force or something of
Sure.
both the agencies,
Right.
to be sitting there. And also then from the patient's point of view as well, either the consumers or other patient groups who should be sitting there in deciding on what accounts to medical inflation.
Right.
How do you, put a limit to that? How do you prevent abuse
Okay.
and ensure transparency and accountability? I'll just stop there for now.
No. I mean, we were having a healthy discussion about this. So I just want to take it back one step, and we come back to health is a human right. We can all agree that health is a human right. And, in order to be sustainable, obviously businesses need to make money. Coming back to Sim and his point of profiteering and profit versus profiteering, we're perfectly fine with profit. Okay. So health being a human right, are insurance companies, when they're designing a product, now you have your investment linked products, which you've just alluded to here, that obviously when you come out with the product, you have a profit margin. Now, is medical insurance, which is very necessary, that we're all talking about, and we can agree that medical insurance is very necessary for the sustainability of a country, okay, for the ill people. Now, what is the profit margin that is acceptable for medical insurance as opposed to investment-linked policies? Maybe, Mark, you can talk a little bit about that. And where can we agree that that is a healthy enough profit moving forward to keep that sustainable? I mean, is that discussion ever in the mind of people who are coming up with these design of policies?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, in recent years, the profit has dissipated.
Okay, it's
I mean,
for medical policy.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
all right.
I mean, it's been widely reported that there's been 56% increase in medical claims in the last 3 years.
Okay,
And that has eroded all the margins. Most companies are lucky to make a profit. Most companies actually are losing money on their medical portfolio. Now,
okay,
you could argue that they can subsidize that with profits from other businesses, which is actually what the result is of Bank Negara's approach, right, for this relief measures. They're asking the shareholders to pay for deferring, right? The rate increases over 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Now, on life insurance, you know, it depends on how you look at profit. Let's say you look at profit as a percentage of premium.
Okay.
Okay, it's going to be in the single digits,
Okay.
and it's a volume game. The companies that are making a lot of money in Malaysia now have been around for 75 years, 100 years, 125 years. There are also many companies. I've worked for big companies and small companies. There are also, medium-sized, smaller companies that struggle to make a profit. But there are some big companies that have been very successful for decades that make a significant profit. Right?
Okay.
So,
But if I can interject,
Yeah,
I look at the net profit for insurance company here, which I did a little bit of research.
yep.
Some of the companies are, from 2022, 778 million. It goes to 1.25 billion. Net profit is about 100% jumped. Another company, 22.9 million, and it goes to 59 million.
Over a span of a year.
200% increase of net profit. So I would say that I don't want to name the names, but you can research it online very easily to get all those numbers. Double, quadruple, what they call net profit. So I would say that insurance are making money.
Okay.
Okay. So despite the claims that that this is struggling, difficult, but the fact is insurance companies are doing healthy. Some 1.12 billion profit
Okay.
a year.
Right.
So
Mark? Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're looking at different lines of business. Now, like I said, you could argue that the shareholders should sacrifice some of their profits from other lines of business and subsidize the losing line of business, which is medical insurance. I can tell you that in 2022, there's a thing called combined ratio. Combined ratio is the amount of claims plus expense plus distribution costs plus profit, right? And so anything less than 100%, there's profit. Anything more than 100%, there's a loss. And in 2022, the average standalone and premium paying rider, the combined ratio was 103% for the life insurance companies. I'm just only talking about my members, which is about 75% of the market. That means most companies were losing money. So what you're saying is, why not they subsidize the medical business from other lines of business?
but these are actually medical insurance companies.
No. They're life insurance companies.
Life insurance.
One line of business is medical insurance.
Okay.
Yep. And in 2023, it got worse. The combined ratio went up to 116%. So that means the average company. Now, some would have been making money, and some would have been losing money.
All companies like that. Some
Yep.
in some segments you lose money. Some you cross subsidy. So that's why you diversify.
Yep.
The same thing
Yep.
with the insurance
Yep.
company. You diversify with different things.
Yep. Yep.
So I think is that the crux of problem of losing money in certain segment. It doesn't mean it spells a doom, but the issue is whether the design of the product is it sustainable. If let's say for example you actually do a lot of the insurers, the insured, they feel they are being shortchanged. Whereas maybe insurance companies should hold the private hospital accountable for that kind of over investigation, over screening, over charges, excessive, maybe unnecessary admission. This kind of thing, it should be against those private hospitals.
Yep.
You cannot pass the buck to the what do you call the consumers. Consumers, like it or not, consumers are at the receiving end. Private hospital, big corporations. Insurance company, big corporations. The private, they are helpless. They have no choice. They pay only. And then when they are loyal to your company, they trust you. But ultimately, what do they get? This is where the issue of trust. If the institution, say for example, banks, if people don't trust the bank, they have a bank run. The company will be destroyed. The same thing with insurance company. If the people lose trust, you overstretch it. You didn't give a good deal, not to say a good deal. You didn't protect them. They leave, and your company cannot sustain. No customer, no company. To me, right?
Yeah, understood. Understood. I understand actually where the consumer's coming from too, because I'm a consumer as well. But there's a couple things that I just wanted to add to your point. One is the private hospitals have to step up to the table as well.
Okay.
I mean, as pointed out by Dato, the only part of the medical care, private medical care that's regulated is a doctor's fee.
Right.
The hospital fees are not regulated. I was in the press a few months ago when I'd make a little bit of a stink about one night in the hospital, 95 line items on my bill, right? And most of them, I can't understand what they are. And so what empowerment do I have to even question what's on that bill? 95 line items, right? So this a la carte pricing thing has to change. And that's why we're pushing for diagnostic related group pricing, which is not a panacea, but just one of many things that hopefully will help hold hospitals accountable. And it works because the private hospitals have no incentive right now for cost savings, cost containment, none whatsoever. And so if you go to diagnostic related group pricing, they'll get a lump sum, right, for a certain procedure, and they will be incented to make as efficient use of that lump sum as possible, and therefore make profit from being efficient rather than just passing on the cost through their a la carte pricing. You talk about insurers making money. What you're asking for is shareholders to subsidize the cost of private care, and that's where I say the private hospitals have to come to the table. And this is where I think MOH has to come to the table as well. They need more authority and empowerment in order to not control pricing.
I think to say that as a shareholder to subsidize is not fair, because when you created a product, you did the calculation. You have the best brain. You have the actual scientists to look at the sustainability of the pool. So everyone buys into your insurance. They expect certain protection. But now what you design is obviously not sustainable, and you didn't. Okay, you can pass the buck to the private hospital. You will say, "Oh, this is the private hospital's fault." But everyone is passing. Our private hospital is passing the buck.
No,
as well.
I don't pass the buck completely to the private hospital.
Okay.
I don't. And at the time the policy was designed, it was thought to be sustainable. Nobody predicted that we'd have 35% claims increase in 2022, 26% claims increase in 2023 is unprecedented.
But at the same time, as an insurance company, you can actually refuse to pay certain items which you think the private hospitals are unfair, and you have that kind of mechanism, right?
We do, yes.
So I think that's where you must actually host because you don't have to pay certain things, because that is unfair. So I think it is. I don't want to blame anyone. Yeah, we have to look at it holistically, and we want a sustainable. So
we need a holistic approach. Yes,
but at the same time, everyone must play their role. Insurance company must play. Look at your system, your own internal system, creating different pools. For example, the pools, the older pools is collapsing, and that's where the retirees, the cancer patient who is loyal to that pool, paying to that pool for 20 years, they are now become the victims. So this is not a sustainable business practice. It should be actually one big pool, and everyone must, so the pool must be sustainable in a way. Yeah. So I think there's something wrong in the company, the business practice or the business model of the insurance company as well.
I do, as we talked earlier off mic, right? I do agree with you that there has to be less pools, if not one pool. Right. Because these closed blocks of business will do nothing but deteriorate over time. And right now, I'm in a closed block of business. Like I used my medical insurance twice in the last year, so they're not going to offer me any enhancements. And so I'm in a closed block of business. And I expect my claims experience in that closed block is going to deteriorate. And I have figures I used to show when I'd give talks on this topic, right? That just with 8% inflation, a 65-year-old couple's rates are going to increase sixfold in 10 years. That's not sustainable. I'm worried for my own medical care as well. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, which is I think the big elephant in the room, is we got to do more to shore up the public health system.
Right.
it's not sustainable as well because it's based on taking as big a piece as they could of general revenue, which is always a chore, right? And medical inflation takes its toll on the public side
Right.
in a different way.
Yep.
It takes its toll by having, longer waits or by having, not having the latest equipment or by not having enough specialists. And specialists get drawn to the private sector because of remuneration and because of other things. I think we need a holistic approach that includes reforming the public sector.
Yeah, Mark, I just wanted to just double check with you. When you said medical claims are increasing, does this include also medical legal cases as well?
Well,
And
that's what
decisions that's being awarded?
I have heard, but it's only just beginning, and I don't have data. But this is what the doctors or the hospitals will tell you is that they're practicing defensive medicine when they order all these diagnostics, and there's probably some truth to that, right?
But when you said, the insurance industry claims that there's a
it
increase
doesn't
in-
include. No, it doesn't. That's not in that figure.
So
That's a
it's not in
completely
that
different
figure?
line of business.
Okay.
No.
I mean, because for me as an ordinary consumer, I don't know. You said that it's, how many percent, 30% increase
In
from last.
2022.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, is this information shared anywhere? I mean, is there in reports in your
It is.
reports?
It
Yeah,
is.
it
Yes,
is
it
there?
is. It is. It is.
Yeah, okay. Because I mean, for an ordinary consumer, we really don't know because sometimes we just get this, letter from the insurance industry
yeah,
saying
Yes.
that,
Yes.
because so and so, how many percent of consumers have claimed, from 9,000 to 13,000, and that's why your insurance premium,
going up.
is going up. So for an ordinary consumer, it's like I've never claimed all my life.
Right.
And then now suddenly from 300, I'm paying 800.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I may have to give up my policy. So, so I think for the consumer, they feel there's no option, no choices, and lack of information because they don't understand how this medical inflation works. So I think there has to be a little bit more transparency in how the insurance industry also calculates this so-called medical inflation. You're giving some general stuff, but how is it taken into consideration when you come up with those inflation rates? I mean, I've Googled and I found, certain rates that's been projected.
Right.
But how? So if you're projecting, which means you take into account, like the level of NCDs in Malaysia that that almost 50% of the population might end up going to the hospital. So which means when you develop or you design your policy, all those are taken into consideration. I mean, now you can't come back and say, oh, we didn't envisage that, so many percentage of people would be claiming, because I'm sure you would have done certain types of modeling in terms of coming up with certain revenues. So I don't think that's a fair answer for an ordinary consumer who, again, depends on coverage, is what, Sim had mentioned, in terms of protecting ourselves, not only now, but also in the long term. I do agree that, at the end of the day now, at the rate things are going, where consumers, especially the low-income consumers, who are not, being served under this healthcare system, I would say the government would have to take responsibility.
true.
There
Yeah.
has to
Yeah.
be, I would say, a government-funded insurance.
Sure.
And this insurance could be some sort of financial mechanism. You can actually use SOXO, where, already
Right.
employees are already contributing,
yes.
employers are contributing, just taking out a small amount. I think there has to be as a kind of a check and balance, I would say,
Okay.
with the insurance. I mean, even if you talk about the insurance industry, I think it's only about 20%, 20 to 22% of our citizens
Yeah.
who are insured, So 80% are not insured.
Right.
So which means they all are depending on out-of-pocket expenses, or they're going to the government system, which is why it's being so overwhelmed. And I think that's where the government has to put, certain budgets, because even when you look at the public healthcare system, it's about 2 certain percentage, which is way lower than the
Average
WHO
GDP,
average.
yes. Yeah. I think we're at
we are
7+% for this past budget, but it takes a long time for us to sustain.
Correct. So we have to put in the money. I mean,
Over
you have
the
now,
years.
government is coming up with all this campaign about the war on sugar, the war on salt, all this kind of, tobacco and so on. All those funds or levies from the industries
Right.
should be plowed back
It's
into
very
the
little.
healthcare.
It's very little if you get sugar tax or you have tobacco tax. It's all very
Sin
small
tax, yeah.
because the whole budget for healthcare is 45 billion. This is the second largest after Ministry of Education.
Education.
So to say that government is not doing something is not unfair because they have been giving a universal coverage for all citizens of Malaysia.
Right.
And then that is already like since independence. So the issue now is the insurance company or private healthcare is created. This is always a dual system. Private healthcare for the people who can afford it. Usually it's the T20, M40. The whole idea is to get as many people as possible to buy an insurance and cover themselves and leave the public hospitals for the poor, the B40. That is the whole idea.
Right.
But the trend is the way I see it is that private hospitals as well as insurance companies are going to the highest possible people to get the maximum profit,
Right.
and then leaving the rest, the M40 and the B40 to the government. I think this is unfair. Okay.
Well,
to me.
I have to disagree. I don't think that insurance companies are going for high profit on this line of business. They are losing money. And the last thing I want to do is go to a customer and say, I'm sorry, I have to increase your premium 150%.
But that's what's happening.
That's
I mean,
what that's-
because you are using
But
the
they
risk
have-
rating of individuals, you know?
No. That's not true. Risk rating of individuals. Now, there's two. Let me just interject a little bit. There are two types of insurance. There's guaranteed renewable, which is written by life and taxable operators, and then there's annual renewable written by general insurance companies. General insurance companies use individual risk rating, but life insurance companies and taxable use the pool concept. And no matter what my claims are, my claims don't affect my premium directly. It goes into the pool, and so it's the pool that affects the premiums. But anyway,
Mark,
that's
Mark, I mean, you're saying it, but
Right.
then in reality, most of those who actually claim don't get renewed. Their policies don't
not
get
true.
renewed.
Not true.
Yeah, but some of them
Not true.
actually they don't get renewed.
They must be from a general insurance company, not from a life insurance company.
I think we don't have to go to the technicals,
Yeah.
but
Sure.
the whole idea is that the coexistence of two systems.
Right.
And to me is that the what they call the private hospitals and the insurance company has obligation. They have a moral duty. You are a profit company. We totally understand. But you must it shouldn't be going for the richest only. Okay, and then actually to me is that the better is to provide go for the masses. For the masses, you get your money.
Volume.
Your volume
Right.
is a volume game. So I think that's where I feel that the system is wrong and the reform must come in. And that's where we are pushing for Bank Negara to sit up and do their work. And we will regulate. I'm pushing for the MOH to regulate the private hospitals. It is a wild, wild west, no regulations. And that cannot continue. It has to be stopped.
Okay, good point. I'm going to make myself very unfavorable with the people who are watching right now, because as a patient advocate doing this exercise and learning about these things, I realized that, like what Mark said, we need a holistic system, because on one side you have corporate business companies with their shareholders, they need to make profits. Then you have government. You have government that is supposed to take care of everyone. Now, the way I have seen it, and I've looked at it, and I find that our laws have allowed corporate companies, businesses to game the system. What I mean by this is our Healthcare Act is from 1971. Our National Pharmaceutical Regulation Act is from the 1950s. It's far too old for anybody. And so when you have old laws like that, and you have the current system, and you've got companies that you've got 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old guys. This predates their birth, for heaven's sake. So you're looking at them figuring out how to game the system and make the profits with the regulations. So this is where I think you come back to, we need regulations, we need new regulations, but we need a holistic regulation that comes in, because health is a human right. How do we solve that problem? And Indrani, I'm going to go to you first, is because your experience, I mean, you've been a legal advisor for many organizations. Where do you see these legal loopholes? What kind of an act or what
Yeah.
do we need to solve this? Because there is a huge, there's not a gap, there's a valley there.
All right.
Right.
And I mean, two things. I think one of the things that we are talking about is about medication. When you're talking about drugs, patented drugs and generic drugs. At the moment now, private hospitals, they usually give you patented drugs.
Okay.
And that's why maybe you have your 40, how many over lines of, medication and so on. Again, there's no transparency in pricing of these patented drugs, and then not even allowing, sometimes because of this they are patented, you don't allow then the the entry of generic products as well. And we have a local pharmaceutical industry here. We have MOPI, but they're not given enough incentives. They're not given enough room for them to be able to produce some of this medication because of these big boys, I would say,
Right.
who is actually, dominating the industry, not allowing sometimes even generic, medicines to come in from there. So I would say the price transparency of medicines, and then also then allowing generic medicines to be used. I think PMX talked about it recently in Parliament as well. So I think the first thing is getting the price transparency. If you talk about under KPD and the Ministry of Domestic Trade,
Right.
now there is a Price Control and Anti-Profiteering Act that was passed a couple of years ago. And it talks about products and services. So it's quite general.
Right.
So which means medication can fall under that act.
Okay.
But till to date, it has not been implemented because why? The industry pushed for a cost-benefit analysis. And as a result of that cost-benefit analysis, the act is not being used. So,
Nice.
so I would say it goes back to Parliament. I think the policymakers need to do something about it.
Let me add to your point on pharmaceuticals, right? This book here is produced by APHM.
Okay.
And it breaks down the profit by source of a private hospital in Malaysia. And you probably wouldn't be surprised that 48% of the profit from a private hospital in Malaysia comes from pharma.
Yes. that's right.
48%.
Yes. It's very high.
Yeah.
And that's the cost that goes to the consumer,
Yes.
actually.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's very high.
And it's quite high. So we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back. We're just only unpacking this. We've got so much to go. So we'll be back right after this. Okay, we're back with Healthcare Simplified with Manpreet Victor, and we're unpacking insurance, the rates. How do we figure this out moving forward? How do we bring healthcare more accessible to the people? Sim, your thoughts, you were talking about Bank Negara Malaysia, BNM, coming in to manage this. Are they, because, and I'm asking this question, because they have been supposed to be in charge of this, have they done a good enough job? Where do they need to improve? Or who do they need to bring on board to make sure that this is done better?
Okay, I think Bank Negara, the role of a regulator is to ensure that the market is stable, sustainable, and they have to come in when there's they found market, what they call
Distortions.
distortion. Yes, you're right.
Yes.
Okay, so I think in this case, when the insurance company, Bank Negara must approve all insurance hike. Whatever increase, they must go through. But I'm quite surprised that they didn't detect in increase of 20, 30, 70, 180% increase. I'm shocked because as a regulator, they submit to you, they must get your approval for any increase. But when you compare your own data, your 2.5% of what you call core inflation, okay? You said medical inflation is 10%. But when the insurance company tells you that they want to increase 30%, 70%, 180%, why didn't you investigate?
Right.
And when we pressure in the parliament and we really bang table, they came to us. To their credit, they came to us, they briefed us, and then they said that they were not aware. So I am saying, hey, so what is going on? Somebody must be in the know. Somebody must be held responsible. So to their credits, they now do that, and then within a short span of time, I want to credit the governor for doing his job. to come out with interim solutions. And that interim solution is good because you limit it to the 10%, which is the inflation. So inflation 10%, you limit to 10%. I think it's fair to everyone. So I think that is where the interim, but I think the whole issue is to solve the fundamental problem. We must look at the whole ecosystem. And now is the time to really reform before it gets what you call a crisis into a crisis.
Right.
You know, so they buy the time 3 years from 2024 to 2026. It's about 2.5 years. I think that's where something must be done within these 2.5 years. Get the necessary regulation or laws into place, because, like what I say, there's still one big part that is unregulated: pharmaceutical as well as this private hospitals.
Right.
This is where we are pushing it. They must do something.
Okay, so I've got to ask you this. I mean, taking into consideration what Sim has just said, over the past couple of years, the data that you've just shared, 22, 21, 22, we've seen a curve post-COVID of elective cases or whatever, that people couldn't go to the hospital from 2021. So it has helped the rise of more spending on healthcare. Same thing to what Sim was talking about, the profits from 2022, 21. No, profits were really high maybe because people didn't claim. They couldn't go to the hospital to do elective, right? So you've seen that rise happen, and now maybe is the curve going down? But at the same time, is that 10% that Bank Negara has capped, will that help at all really for the companies? I'm just trying to ask.
Yeah. Okay, a couple things. We are seeing a tempering of the claims growth. 22 was, as I mentioned, 36%. 23 was 25. Q3 24 is 15%.
Okay.
So we're happy to see that trending down. It's not down far enough yet, but we're happy to see that trending down. The average claims inflation rate the last 3 years has been 16.1% in Malaysia.
Average.
Average.
Okay.
Okay. Now, about half of that's come from the cost of care. The other half comes from more people claiming. Okay. So these two things, add to that.
Right.
Your second question was?
So
Sorry?
is that 10% that the Bank Negara has set?
Yeah.
Is that good enough?
The short answer is no, because the companies don't reprice every year.
Okay.
They reprice every 3 to 5 years. And so that 50% rate increase is, let's say...
and it's not true, because we get data from the people who complains to us. Some of them show to us, it's not only one case, it's of many cases, they increase every 2 years. Every 2 years, they increase, and substantial increase. So they give me a 10 years statement. So we were like, oh wow, it's every 2 years. So to say that they increase 3 to 5,
that's what most companies do.
Yeah.
I can't speak for every company.
Yeah.
The general insurance companies would increase every year. Okay.
Because those are year-on-year policies.
Yes. And in most markets, the premiums are increased every year.
Okay.
But for many companies, and the big ones in particular, it's they increase when they feel they have to increase, which has to do with where the claims ratios are going. And in the past, it had been every 3 to 5 years. I'm not surprised if it's shortened now.
So you were saying just now that it's about 16% on average, the increase?
The last 3 years, yes.
The last 3 years. Has that happened?
And sorry, can I just qualify that a little bit further? That's not an estimate. That's from data of every single claim that has been filed in Malaysia, because we've just stood up a claims database that goes back 3 years. And we will make this database more granular as we go ahead, and it will become more useful in trying to detect opportunities to control costs. So this number is a real number from real data.
For the last 3 years?
For the last 3 years.
So what happens to the data from the previous? I mean, has it been rising from 10 years ago? What was that?
That's an interesting question. So we did a study from 2013 to 2018, because this is not a new problem. It was already becoming a problem 10 years ago, right? And the average cost of care increased about 8% a year from 2013 to 2018.
Okay.
Now, 2019, we didn't do a study, but claims jumped 20%. Then we hit COVID.
Okay.
So the two COVID years were extraordinarily low
Low.
relative to historical numbers, right?
Yeah.
One year, actually, the amount of claims went down a couple percent, and the other year it went up about 8% or so. So you could argue that companies were making more money during that time, and they were, and most companies used that to defer their price increases. But what we're seeing now is a catch up from two things.
Right.
One is the recent inflation rate,
Okay.
and two is many companies, if not all companies, were asked to defer their rate increases during COVID because, for obvious reason, people were suffering in many different ways during that time, and companies had deferred their rate increases during that time.
So what we're seeing today, this current rate is because of that deferment and inflation and
Partially.
plus.
Yes, partially.
So do you think that, I mean, with Bank Negara, do you think that these guys are equipped now to do this? Because, I mean, this has become a huge issue. Everyone is very involved in this. Are we ready to be able to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Bank Negara, yes, as a regulator, I think in terms of capping on the amounts, but I don't know whether they do have the medical expertise from that
Right.
aspect, in terms of when insurance industry claims that, this is not needed. Who in Bank Negara actually are qualified enough to say
Right.
that we decide. That's why I feel there still needs to be a kind of an oversight body
Right.
that kind of gives. That's why you have both Bank Negara and MOH sitting in that oversight body, a task force,
Right.
maybe under the Prime Minister's office,
Right.
that can kind of give that kind of guidance. Because at the moment now, I mean, Bank Negara, as we know, most of them are from the financial side,
Right.
So would they be equipped enough to look into all these medical terminologies and diseases and decide? No, if say for example, company A says, I shouldn't be approving the second and third MRI.
Right.
Is Bank Negara equipped enough to say that no, you need that, or
Right.
you should be reviewing that? So that's why I feel there needs to be an oversight body.
Dato, can I just interject?
Yeah.
I think MOH should be doing that, actually, because I think Bank Negara is not part of their
So that's what
purview.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
When you have MOH doing certain things, and then you have Bank Negara doing
Right.
Yeah.
the medical
Yeah.
insurance
Yes.
treatment. That's
Yeah.
why I feel they need to be combined.
This is where I can come in a little bit. I think
Yeah.
I know the government, how the government works. I was formerly in government, and I know the system, how it works. So I think the issue now is there's lack of coordination.
Coordination.
There's always been silo mentality. I do my thing. This is what my mandate. This is the law that gave me the power. I do it whatever. The less that I go and kacau, MOH is better. Or you please don't intervene into my work. So I think that's where the lack of what you say,
The
whether there's a
coordination.
coordination or task force, I hate those names, but there's a need for it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think we need to find a body to do the necessary what they call combine of the departments and ministries to work on certain things.
Right.
Okay. So that's where you leave it to us for the
Okay.
regulators, for
Right.
the lawmakers to think about it.
I mean, what we are proposing is a patient's council,
Exactly,
that kind of looks into the safety, the
But what I
parking
think
and
is
so
more
on.
important is for Bank Negara, there's this they are acting on insurance company falls under the Financial Services Act. The Financial Services Act actually give them this too big, because they have to look at banks, they have to look at investment companies, they have to look at various, all fall under, including insurance company, all fall under Financial Services Act. So I think they don't have the what you call the time or the what you call the very
Resources.
focus.
Yeah.
Maybe
Mm.
didn't have the power given to under the Financial Services Act to regulate properly for insurance company. So if we find that there's a lacking in Financial Services Act, then we should be actually separate the insurance. We do an insurance health insurance or insurance act,
Right.
and Insurance Services Act, say for example, because we used to have it, the Insurance Services Act, but it's later combined into Financial Services Act. So it's not very standalone. So it's very general. So I think maybe the lack of oversight or something happened because of lack of power or lack of what they call puncak kuasa.
Right.
So I think that's where. Then second thing is that we have to look at this regulation into private hospital. That's where there's no puncak kuasa, there's no law to give the power to MOH.
Right.
And MOH is too huge from what they call advising the government, from their roles, providing healthcare policy, whatever you eat, nutrition, healthcare, all under them. They are too big. And then I think when you have a ministry so big, you tend not to, if the
Prioritize.
problem doesn't come out, forget about it. I'm not going to go and look into it. Now, the problem came.
Right.
Private hospital, excessive, the price increase, the inflation is too much. Now, so that's where I'm pushing, there must be a new law. Okay? A regulation.
Right.
Must be tabled within this 1 or 2 years to regulate it.
Okay.
Or else it's too late. Yeah. So that's where I think when there are 2 laws coming in, then we'll find maybe we need to another overarching body to look into, to have these 2 together
Okay.
to regulate the whole. Maybe it's
I
a commission.
agree
It's a
with
commission.
Sim,
Yeah.
because I mean, if you look at the US, you have the Food and Drug Administration where
FDA,
food,
yeah.
in terms of nutrition, food safety, and then drugs, pharmaceutical is all a separate body.
Yeah.
And then you have the health, which really looks into the healthcare, you
Right.
know. And that's what actually MOH, because I go for all these meetings under MOH.
Sure.
I go for food safety, I go for nutrition,
Yeah.
I go for dietary guidelines, I go for all these various ministry meetings.
Right.
And so again, there's no priority in terms of focus
Right.
until an issue comes up. So perhaps that's where again we need to have an act that kind of separates
Sure.
the food and drugs into a separate body. And many countries have taken up that kind of format, like even India
Right.
has got the Food and Drug Administration. So there are many countries that have used that model
Yeah.
where the Ministry of Health purely looks at it from the healthcare,
Sure.
in terms of treatment, prevention. See, we have not even gone into prevention. We are
Nope,
so
we haven't.
focused
Yes. Yeah.
into treatment, you
Yeah.
know. Look at the numbers in terms of NCDs. Yes, we keep on talking about it. We keep on saying that, we are the highest in ASEAN in terms of NCDs.
Right.
But what have we done? If you're talking about campaigns on sugar and salt, these are all very minute,
Sure.
initiatives that's
Right.
not going to basically
Right.
address the whole issue of NCDs. So you really have to have, really holistic programs that actually look into NCDs. Look at what other countries are doing. Look at Singapore. What kind of incentives are being
Absolutely.
given
Yeah.
to citizens in terms of walking? You have a wearable which you can pick up anywhere.
Yeah.
And if you reach 10,000, you get a voucher for you to go to your grocery store.
Right.
That kind of small incentive. Sometimes we citizens, I would
Yes.
say, need
Right.
that kind of incentive to start. You need to nudge them.
Right.
This is behavioral change. A
Yeah.
lot of our ministries in Malaysia, unfortunately, are only looking at promoting, but they do not provide that kind of incentives to nudge. We need to have behavioral change, not only from the industry side,
Right.
but also from the consumer side.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why you need to work holistically. And so who then does it? Is it BNM or is it MOH? Neither of them are doing it. And then Ministry of Domestic Trade says, oh, healthcare is not under our act. So it's not under our jurisdiction.
Sure.
So where are the consumers going? If claims get delayed or they get rejected, where do the consumers go?
Right.
You have the financial ombudsman, you have financial services ombudsman, but that is set up by the industry. It's supported by the industry.
Right.
So then you tend to know where the claims are going towards as well.
Right.
So consumers then don't have confidence in the system. So there has to be somewhere that consumers are able to go to. At the moment now, no redress for the consumers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. In one of the things that I would hope that you'd add into this new act that you do is something that we have done badly in Malaysia is when we have an act that becomes the be all and end all, there's no review of the act every three or 5 years, because this comes back to again the fees that a doctor charges has not been changed for 20 years. I'm not a doctor, but a lot of doctors talk to me about it because that act became the be all and end all of it, and it stopped there. And if it said 20 ringgit, it stopped at 20 ringgit. There was no review period. We are looking at Indonesia now. They have a new act for their healthcare, and they review everything every year. So there is a department that's job is to look and say, are we spending enough? Is there leakages? Are we doing enough? Is it being effective? And then you look at it on a yearly basis, and we'll never perfect this in a year, but it will take a concerted effort from everyone, both government, non-government, that sees that. But one of the things that in the act that we should put is we need to review this, which means that nobody falls asleep at the wheel. Because that looks like what has happened with the rate increase. And you're talking about 2012, 2013, you did a study, but Bank Negara, well, they didn't realize that the rate was going up. Someone somewhere, whether it's MOH or BNM, fell asleep at the wheel here.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the last Bank Negara report, there's no information now on how many people have taken up insurance. Why? It's not there in the last report that how many people actually
So what's the
have.
percentage of the population?
It has been there before, but
12.9
not.
million.
Yeah.
Sorry?
12.9 million.
I mean,
12.9
of course,
million.
you're from the industry, so you
Is it
will know.
12.9 million
Even policies, right?
or people?
Not person. Like,
Person is about 44%, 43%.
Or population?
Yes.
that's very high.
Yeah.
Actually, very high.
Yeah.
Was
but
that-
by policy, it's about 57, 58%.
So would that be what's the percentage life insurance versus general insurance?
No, I'm just talking about life insurance.
Oh, just life insurance.
And sorry, I have to
Sure, okay.
qualify. I only talk about my members because I don't have data on Takaful.
Okay.
I don't have data on general insurance.
So
Okay.
maybe it's even
It's
bigger.
more. It's more because
Yeah.
Takaful has been growing
Because that's
quite well.
overlapping, obviously, because we buy multiple insurance.
Yeah,
The company buys for
yeah,
you, and
right,
so that
right.
kind of things.
Yeah.
So that's
So when you say 44, so is that individuals? Because it could be where
Individuals.
44%.
44%. And about 57, 58% is policies per capita.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Policies per capita. So we're looking at that. That's good data to have.
Yeah.
And thank you, Mark, for sharing that. And Bank Negara should be sharing this so that we are able to look at it holistically and make decisions as to what we're going to do next. Right? Sim, anything to add from that? Bank Negara and what we should do with policies.
I think to say policy reviews and all this, these are a standard process in the ministry. Actually, they do. They have the reviews on things. This, say, for example, the schedule fees for the doctors.
Right.
Okay, they are not being in review or something because it's quite sustainable. To be honest, you look at the doctors. I look at the doctors. Let's be honest here.
Right.
Okay, they are doing pretty well.
Perhaps except for the GP.
Yes, only the GP. Yes,
GP,
Perhaps
I
except for the
understand.
GP.
but
right?
the specialists are doing very well.
Yes, they are.
And they got the fees 13 years ago. Can you imagine that kind of
Yes.
fees at that
Yeah,
time?
yeah.
So now they're still doing very well. So what I would say is that it's until there's maybe the medical associations comes and pressure, there's a review, then they will review. I think the law process is a very healthy one. Okay, of course, I don't deny there are some obsolete laws.
Right.
The parliament is like,
Sure.
we have to rush through the bills all the time, and it's very stressing work, actually,
Yeah.
to be honest. So we cannot do everything. Then you cannot say that, this law has to be reviewed every 3 times. Impossible.
Okay.
Because the law process, you have to go through stakeholders engagement, go through legal process. You have to get, they call it law
reform committee.
law reform and all this. Then only they can table to the cabinet and then ultimately to the parliament. So I think our laws are pretty okay. There are rooms to improve,
Right.
but it's not bad at this point.
And from your point of view, Bank Negara currently with that 10%, and they're talking about this $60 million fund. What is that? And
That's a good question
right.
because we're asking the same question.
Okay. There's a $60 million fund.
Yes.
Within that is it being contributed to by the government, or is it being contributed
The
by the
proposal is 20 million from MOF, 20 million from the hospitals, and 20 million from the insurance industry.
Okay, and what does that fund do? Does anyone?
And what I've heard, and what I've heard from Bank Negara is that it will be used to fund reform initiatives, but it's vague at this point.
Right.
And I hope it's sustainable, not just for 1 year, just because that money. I think
Okay.
it was put in the last just recently.
Yes.
That
yes.
that it just doesn't last for 2025, but it goes into something where you get some long-term solutions.
To put it in
you know?
perspective, 60
Yeah.
million out of an industry of 100 over billion It's nothing. It's a drop in the vast ocean. So I think we will try to ask what are they going to
What's
do
the-
with that this
60.
60 million, but it's very small to me.
No, I mean,
Uh,
looking at the industry wise, yes,
Huge.
absolutely. Well, what are we doing with it, that 60 million? What's it going for?
Yeah, it's
And-
fair to ask the question.
Yeah.
Right.
It's supposed to go to fund reform now, but that's a very vague statement.
Right.
I can't offer anything more than that because I don't know anything more than that.
Okay. But from this 2025, we're starting the year right now. Where do you see us going in the next 24 months with life insurance?
I think a couple things. One is we're working with MOH on trying to get DRG, diagnostic related group pricing.
So you guys are for that.
Yes,
All right.
we're for that, which is really just granular package pricing,
Yes,
right?
correct.
It's package pricing based on a myriad of comorbidities that might exist, you know, to try to get more exact pricing, right? And it will force hospitals to become more efficient with the monies that they get versus just tacking on whatever plus they get on their a la carte pricing,
Okay.
right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that we'll be working on coming out with, I think it was mentioned earlier, you know, who needs 10 million of coverage, right?
Yeah, correct.
Mine is unlimited. Who needs unlimited coverage, right? Right?
Yeah.
We'll be working on a series of products that are more affordable and that are more reasonable levels of coverage that in, say, 98% of the cases may be adequate, right?
Right.
And that's something that we're actually starting. We'll have our group will be formed this month to start on
Okay.
that.
Right.
Those are two things. The third thing is our database. The database will help us to identify fraud, waste, and abuse. That will be developing over a couple of years. Some of the data that we want is not even available yet or is not actionable yet. But that will be continually evolving. We'll be publishing the average rate of common procedures across all private hospitals in Malaysia to give consumers hopefully more empowerment as to where they may go. Still lacking one very important aspect of it, and that's outcomes. You can't get anything but macro numbers for outcomes, and it's not even public, right? Like mortality rates or readmission rates or other things like that. But people need to know not just how much it costs, but how good of an outcome might I expect from this provider, right?
Right.
And copays. Now we can talk about copays. Some people are for it, and some people are fiercely against it, thinking that we're pushing the problem to the consumer. But it has shown in other markets where copays will make the consumer more aware of the cost
Right.
and will result in more, how do I say, more efficient or more reasonable healthcare decisions.
But it doesn't bring down the cost.
Oh,
For
it does.
certain- I mean, there are some.
It does
there
bring
are
down
some
the cost.
cases. Yeah, but very, very limited. It's not as if how it's been promoted because there have been cases of new policies. I
Right.
mean, like, if it's supposed to be 550, now the person is only paying like 512. So it's a very small amount in terms of
Okay.
reduction. So I think we need
Well,
to kind of see
We'll
how
see.
it
There's
goes
different.
about.
There are different
Yeah.
kinds of copays and levels
Yeah.
of copays, but
Yeah.
we'll see. I
All
mean,
right.
it's meant to. First of all, it's really a one-time reduction, right?
Mm.
Because
Okay.
they'll still have inflation on that on that copay plan, and hopefully, though, it will be less of a rate. So the jury's out.
Mm.
I will give you that. The jury is out, but it's been almost an evolution that you'll find in countries around the world. So we'll see. But those are just some of the highlights of what's going on right
So I've got to circle back to you were talking about abuse from providers, right?
Mm.
So when that happens and when you find out that hospital A charged 20,000 ringgit for this, same procedure, hospital B, different rate, higher rate, hospital C even higher. So what is that abuse that you're talking about? And what do insurance companies do to protect the policy holder
Mm.
from that? And as well as yourself, your bottom line, because, for the same procedure, you're paying 3 different rates for it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, The hospitals will argue that they have different cost base, they're in different markets, the procedures are different, the case is different. It's very difficult, actually, on a case-by-case basis to argue with a doctor or hospital as to why this was necessary or wasn't necessary. It's extremely difficult. But with our database, if we have broad data and we can see patterns, then we can identify repeat abuses.
Okay.
And those repeat abuses will become topics of discussions with providers.
Okay.
But case by case, it's extremely difficult. Every doctor has a reason why they ordered this, and this. And then if you question them, the inevitable answer is, why are you interfering with the treatment of my patient? And so it's been difficult. So the database will help in that way.
Okay. Has there ever been the situation where you've had to look at a hospital and say, you've been naughty too long, there's the situations, and what do you do when that happens?
Well, it's been happening, actually. Maybe I wouldn't use the word naughty, but,
Okay.
but let's say a hospital is on the fringe of expense,
Okay.
right? There have been insurers that have taken action by removing them from their panel.
Okay.
And by removing them from their panel doesn't mean you can't go there and get service, but it means you can't use your
card.
cashless card and not
Right.
pay for it first. And so, and it's interesting to me that hospitals are complaining about it's not fair because they have to pay these exorbitant fees to go to the hospital. And I'm thinking, you're the one charging these exorbitant fees, right?
Right.
In the U.S. in the old days, when I was, a younger man, I'd go into the hospital before Obamacare or any of those things, and I would assign my policy to the hospital. The hospital would make a claim on my behalf and then bill me for the difference. But in Malaysia, and not just Malaysia, I've worked in 6 countries in Asia, no hospital wants to take any credit risk on the patient.
Okay.
So they want it all paid, up front,
Yeah.
or
Guarantee.
they want a guarantee, yeah.
So when a patient goes now to the hospital and gives his card and they have a procedure, there's a guarantee.
Yeah,
Implied
guarantee is actually a bad word, actually,
Okay.
because it's not accurate. It's really a pre-authorization, because in some cases, the guarantees are not are altered in the middle of the procedure. You could find out first they had a pre-existing condition that they didn't disclose, or other things that come up that cause the insurance company to take another look at that guarantee letter.
Right.
So we really got to work on changing the
wording.
attitude,
Right.
not just the wording, but the meaning of what this is, and it's really a pre-authorization.
But there's also issue of the people who pay insurance, the private hospitals. Yeah, I have always been highlighting a case where cataracts. Yeah, husband and wife will go into the same hospital for the same procedure. The wife has insurance. She got charged 6,000. The husband didn't have an insurance. He paid his own pocket. Was charged only 3,000. It's 100% difference. And Bank Negara's statistics have shown that dengue cases, with you pay out of pocket, you just pay 1,200 in private hospitals. But if you have an insurance, you pay about 5,000.
Yep.
Four times difference.
Yep.
So these are the things that insurance company actually. Why are insurance company not actually pressing the what do you call?
Well, that's interesting, because we don't have the all the data that we need in order to make a case, but the database hopefully will help. We don't have uninsured patient data. We don't have.
But now,
so
now,
when we
now actually
question-
Bank Negara has published it.
Not uninsured patient data, I don't think.
But the one that they gave,
There's a couple of studies. There's a couple of studies. Dengue was one.
pneumonia another one.
Pneumonia was another one. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, I'm still trying to get the granular claims on those two to support that that support that finding. Yeah. And another point, which is related, right, is on diagnostics. Okay, so you talk about and this I've heard right directly from a doctor, right? If I have a patient who I know is cash paying, I will take due care as to what procedures I'll order, because I know it's going to cost him or her a lot of money, right? But if I have a patient who is insured, I don't think about how much it costs.
But the difference is 3 times, 4 times. That excessive to me.
Yep.
So that's why
It is
I think the insurance company must actually ask the, I
Come-
mean, must
come to the
question,
table.
and the professor,
Yeah.
you explain to us.
Yeah.
Why
I
is it like
feel,
that?
the DRG
Yeah.
is a way forward
Right.
because I
Yeah.
think it kind of the hospital would have
Yeah.
to get that approval, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, from the insurance industry
Right.
before the person goes
Well, they would
for
pre-agree
any,
to the DRG.
pre-agree, yes.
That's going to be the tough part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because-
but if now you don't even know how much you go for a day, like
Yeah,
tomorrow
But
you went
DRG
for a
must
day.
have
Yeah.
good data as well.
Yes.
because
It does.
Correct.
It has to
You need
be
benchmarking, you need
benchmarking
input
on
data.
local
Yes.
Yes.
condition, not
Yes.
based on Singapore, not
No,
based on US.
exactly.
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
So-
You're absolutely right.
DRG has been implemented, for instance, in Singapore, in India. There are a lot of
In
countries
Europe,
that have.
Well,
Yes.
it's usually used for public systems.
Okay.
Because public systems have a finite amount of funding normally.
Yeah.
And so it's a budgeting tool. It allows them to allocate funds, for certain procedures to different hospitals for their
Then we use the GH at the general hospital's DRG, and then maybe you do some
Yeah.
explanation
fine-tuning
and
it.
fine tuning.
This was part of one outcome they're hoping to get from Rakan KKM
Right.
was, so this is they call it premium deluxe, right?
Right.
premium economy.
Premium economy, sorry,
Yeah.
premium economy, where they're trying to mimic the private hospital experience to a degree,
Right.
right? And charge for it.
Right.
I mean, frankly, I think this is the way the government should look at the entire public health system. They look on a needs base, look at the poor, but on another base, charge for some of the services because they need more diverse sources of funding.
Right.
They need to stand on their own because it's really it's really gotten to a place where it's a crisis.
But
So-
you also have to see about the resources at the moment now.
Right.
You don't have that kind of human resource,
absolutely.
the lack of doctors,
Yes.
housemen,
Right.
I mean, from 6,000 coming down to 3,000.
Right.
And as far as I know, I mean, I've got a few relatives who just joined housemanship this year.
Right.
In the last 6 months. And, the people who joined her in May, already 6 of them have quit, housemanship. So, and they are all now in the state-based hospitals,
Right.
and they have to then now serve district hospitals once a week.
Right.
So if you're talking about, again, Rakan KKM, that's my concern. You're talking about doctors, nurses, medical personnel who are already going to do 9 to 5,
Right.
on a shift basis or whatever. And then you're talking about after 5 to 10
Right.
for them to stay on.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of things that needs to be ironed out, I
No
would
doubt.
say.
Sure, absolutely.
No doubt.
Because, people can just take
That's
time
another
off.
whole big topic
Whole big
altogether.
topic
Absolutely.
altogether,
Yeah.
because people can just take time off from
Yeah.
their morning and
Yeah.
then just go for the profit making in the evening. So I
Absolutely.
think, at the
Okay.
end of the day, are consumers being served? I think
Okay.
when you talk about the healthcare, yes, profit, but then again, you need to see about the healthcare of the nation, because you can have high GDPs and so on, but if
Sure.
at the end of the day, if your people are not healthy,
Yeah.
the citizens are not healthy, the country will go down,
Mhm.
in
I
shambles.
agree with you. The weakest link in a chain is that's how strong that chain is, right? The chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So let's end up now talking about copay or universal healthcare system.
Before we go there, I want
Right,
to
sure.
raise last point.
Right.
There's actually one issue that I think needs the attention of the public as well as everyone is the negligence claim. Yeah, the medical
legal.
negligence cases. Recently,
Mm.
there's the court has awarded about 8 million for medical negligence. Actually, that actually make the private hospital very, very careful,
Yep.
very
Yep.
risk averse.
Yep.
So they actually these are actually what part of the excessive screening and etc. So I think that we cannot go the litigation way of American
Right.
system.
Cannot.
It,
Sure.
it cannot be.
Cannot.
So that's where some of the things that even law reforms in our judges must understand their decision actually have an effect on the general well-beings of our citizens, because if they award that kind of not to say I mean that kind of like huge
Yeah.
payout
Settlement.
settlement, then the insurance company will have to raise their fees. The doctors will be extra careful, and then that actually added cost to all our services.
I agree with that. However, as a patient advocate, over the years, what I've seen has been data that in 100% of these cases, of medical legal cases across the world, about 80 to 90% of the problem has been the lack of communication and the lack of transparency from the provider. To talk to you, if you went and made a complaint about something, they stonewall you, then you escalate it through the courts because they don't want to sit down on a table and say, okay, this is what happened, this is what happened. So there's that stonewall tactic, right? So the higher that goes, the more cases are medical legal. The more cases are medical legal, this happens, right? Because again, it's a communication issue globally. Globally, when you shut the door, you don't want to talk to the patient. First of all, the patient comes into the hospital, they go through a procedure, something happens. Maybe it's an adverse outcome, whatever it is, but you are not willing to talk to him because, oh, speak to a lawyer, we're not going to talk to you, speak to a regulator, whatever it is. And suddenly, there's no trust anymore. So the patient came to you, pain, vulnerable, you shut the door on them. So that's possibly why the case happens. I think
Alright, that's why there's no redress. That's what I'm saying.
exactly.
There's no redress mechanism. That's why you need some sort of a council or an oversight body that can kind of take these complaints, because now post these problems, the consumer then either goes, as I said, to the Financial Services Ombudsman,
Right.
which is industry based.
Yeah.
So then you tend to know how the cases also tend to go, and you can actually look at their reports to see how many cases that the consumers actually win. Then they have got no choice but to go to the courts, and that's why you have these very high rates of medical legal cases. But we also need to see what is the role of the AG's chambers. They are supposed to, put in this mechanisms and say, why are these cases coming? Because if there's no defense from the AG's chambers, because most of the time, it's the cases that are from the public sphere, public healthcare system, So that's why then you see AG's chambers saying, no defense.
Right.
And then you have these huge payouts by the courts because there's no defense from the other side. And that's why you have the defensive, treatment by the private hospitals. They'll say, okay, I don't want to, risk myself. That's why I'm doing all these additional tests,
There are two things to add to YB's comment, right? One is about 40 to 50% of the legal costs are lawyers' fees.
All right.
Right? And the other thing is that if I'm not wrong, a hospital now is held liable for the malpractice of their consultant,
Yes.
which is not their employee, right? This is what frightens a lot of private hospitals, right?
Yes.
They're now on the hook for what their consultants, or not their consultants, what the consultant does or doesn't do in the hospital.
And that's why the medical indemnity for doctors
Right,
also
this is-
increased.
Exactly.
My brother is a doctor,
Right.
and he told me, he said in 2023 he paid 30,000 for his medical indemnity,
Right.
and last year he paid 48,000, even though there's no
Yeah.
claims against him,
Right.
but he has to pay that. So
I mean, it's
I think we have to look into
yeah, absolutely.
holistic- yeah.
Holistically, it's going up.
Yeah.
So coming back to the question here, copay, is that the way to go only, or a universal healthcare kind of a system that Malaysia should adopt, similar to some of the other countries? I mean, America doesn't have a UHC there itself, proper UHC. the
Not
way
in the
WHO,
traditional way.
Yeah.
No.
But which would you think be better for us sustainably over the next 5,
Well, I
10
think,
years?
and Liam endorses a national health scheme
Right.
that would be a little bit similar to the Singapore model,
Okay.
where
They have
there's a
Medishield.
basic amount of cover that is provided by the government,
Okay.
right? Provided could mean many things, right? The financing of it is a whole other story, okay? But let's say there's a basic amount of cover, and you got to get like 80-90% of the population covered, right?
Okay.
And then on top of that, the private sector can write additional coverages, whether it's integrated or separate, it doesn't matter. And copays play a part, as long as they are not overly burdensome,
Okay.
right? So the whole spirit of insurance is to protect something you can't afford to cover yourself. So if I go into the hospital, I don't mind admit, I can afford a $500 deductible. I can afford 10% of the first 10,000. So why wouldn't I opt for that
Right.
that plan and hopefully save a bit more than the premium example that you gave earlier?
Yeah.
Right.
And hopefully have a bit slower rate of inflation, right?
Right.
The other thing is that copays, unfortunately, the negative part is it's going to be a natural evolution of rising premiums because people won't be able to afford to have the plan they have. So in order to keep a plan at all, they will be pushed toward copay. And that's not the intent, but that could be an outcome.
I think we don't have we must develop our own system. There's no point referring to Singapore, which is such a small country.
Yeah.
We shouldn't. To me personally, I don't think copay is the right thing. I live in America for 6 years. I know how bad it is, that system. Okay, I think we must look at our own model. I think first starting with everyone playing responsibly. Insurance company, you can make a profit, not excessive profit. Private hospital, you can make a profit, but not excessive profit. Let's do with that. And then Rakan KKM do their model. Okay, I think, and then actually to the credit of the government, we have a universal health
Healthcare,
coverage,
yeah.
which is for the B40. Whatever you do, even the richest person can go to the general hospital and get whatever cares that they want. I think we have that system. It's maybe a hybrid. It's a work in progress. I don't think we can learn from someone to do something. It is the collective wisdom of our people to find a suitable model for Malaysia.
Right.
And last, I will say that the blame shouldn't go to just the private hospital or the private the insurance company as alone. Our people have to take care of our own health. We are the highest in NCD. We are the highest in Asia for obesity, and also what do you call various disease.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we must take care of our health. Do more exercise. Eat responsibly. Now we are nasi lemak morning, afternoon, and night. And all the gula, the
Yeah.
teh tarik, the most, that kind of sweet thing. So I think this is where everyone must aware, because if you blame what do you call the government for that kind of healthcare, but if your health is not good, then
Yeah.
you know
Right.
who can save you?
Yeah.
And finally, is also I always blame politicians as well, because we cannot have a consensus. Let's say, for example, national health insurance. If we think that national health insurance is a basic national health insurance is the way forward, let's say, but it's impossible to get bipartisan support because politics. Okay, so these are the things that I think
We've been talking about it for years.
yes,
Yeah.
but it is impossible to do. I will tell you.
Yeah.
If you have it tomorrow, you table it in parliament, the whole government will fall. That's impossible.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we must collectively find a system where we to adjust and make it sustainable. Yeah, that's where I feel.
I have to agree with you, and I have to say that of all things, all things being equal, this current government that we have right now under Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim is not to blame for this issue. Because every other government before this, we can see, because there's a progressive issue right here. Over 20 years, 30 years that was not addressed with our laws and all these things. This particular government just happened to inherit this problem. Just like all four of us here, everybody in the studio, whatever it is, the entire nation inherited this problem, right? And we are today trying to find our way out of it. And Indrani, how about you? I mean, copay, universal healthcare, national insurance.
I know what she's going to say.
Yeah, okay.
Well, definitely not copay, because I mean, if you
Yeah.
learn from the American example,
Right.
I mean, many patients or consumers have been medically bankrupt,
Oh, absolutely.
because
yes.
of the co-payment, because they're not able to,
Yeah.
afford. So I wouldn't want us to go that way. Already, our bankruptcy levels are
Yeah.
very high because of our
Literally.
lack of financial literacy,
Yes. Yeah.
So if you add on this medical part, it's
Yeah.
going to be worse for the country again.
Yeah.
So I would say, universal healthcare in terms of coming up with a mechanism
Right.
that where there is a government funded, and as I said, you don't have to create a new system.
Okay.
Use existing systems where we have EPF, we have SOXO. Let's start on a phase by phase basis or on a tier system. At least start with those who are already employed. If you
Okay.
look at SOXO, it talks about those who are formally employed,
Right.
and you also have those who are in the informal sector, which
Right.
you can choose to also contribute.
Contribute. Yeah.
Let's start with that group,
Right.
and then slowly build it up. So not to kind of start a whole national healthcare financing system, a new thing, a new model where, politically it may not be, viable,
Right.
but at least start with something that's already pre-existing.
Right.
Find something that, that can work with SOXO. As I said already, from under SOXO, you can go for your kidney dialysis and
Yeah.
so on, where you can actually take out funds to do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, EPF also gives you the third account where you can actually cover your medical
Right.
insurance premiums and so on. But perhaps maybe you want to keep EPF to a bit further for, more for your old age savings and so on. Use SOXO as I think that's a good mechanism for us to start,
Yeah.
and then keep on building on that, and ultimately to ensure that the whole of nation
Sure.
or the whole of society is actually covered.
Yeah.
So I would still go for that. That start with something that's pre-existing, have an oversight body under the Prime Minister's office, not
Right.
under some ministry, because again it's going to be working in silos.
Okay.
So you need to have something under the Prime Minister's office where all the stakeholders can come in and talk about patients' safety, patients' welfare in terms of accessibility to healthcare, affordability to healthcare,
Yeah.
and availability of healthcare. I think when you talk about consumers, that's what we always look for: availability, acceptability, affordability, and accessibility. So as I said, these are the four that we need to look at, and that's where FOMCA we are pushing for that.
Absolutely.
From the government side.
And equity, patient equity needs to be there so that the kind of care they want when they need it is there. And I love Sim's point of view about us, all of us being more in charge of our own health.
That's also something that we are also promoting. And that's what I hope
awareness.
the insurance industry will work with the consumer movement, because I've yet to see, I've been in the consumer movement for the last 30 years. I joined FOMCA in 1995.
Wow.
I went on to Consumers International, and I just came back about 2 years ago.
Okay.
But this whole insurance thing has been, especially now, but I've yet to see that kind of collaboration where we are actually talking to consumers about how do they actually understand their medical insurance policies. Not only medical, but life insurance, general insurance. The insurance industry has not been very forthcoming in terms of raising awareness or educating the consumers. I think that's something that's sorely lacking. So from our side, what we are planning to do, I would just like to share, is that we are going to go on a traffic light labeling system. Since the insurance industry is not forthcoming, we are going to work with some of our experts, a pool of experts, to start looking at insurance policies and give it red, amber, or green in terms of whether it's being consumer friendly or not. I mean, it may be not following certain norms of the insurance industry, but we are going to look at it from the consumer perspective, because I find that they're not forthcoming. So unless, Mark, you start doing something and engage with us, this is how we are going to move forward.
Engaging with you is another topic, but I take exception to this that we're not forthcoming. We have our biggest part of our budget of the association is consumer education and awareness. We're not reaching you, obviously.
But
and
you're
we're-
also reaching the consumers,
Well,
because why are they then all complaining?
that's a
Yeah.
lesson that I'll take
Yeah.
back and see how
Yeah.
we can better reach the consumer. But it's not for lack of trying. Ever since I've been with the association, only 6 years, the biggest part of our budget and spend is consumer
Better
awareness and
spend some with
education.
FOMCA so that you avoid the red
Because
card.
you must understand, we go down to schools, we go down to
Absolutely,
primary
yeah,
schools,
yeah.
secondary schools, universities, residents association. We are at the grassroots level, and that's where we're getting all the complaints. We have the National Consumer Complaints Center.
Right.
That's where we're getting all the complaints. I have evidence that we always, when we take our complaints, we get them to share the policies, the complaints, everything. So we have
Right.
evidence. Most of our complaints are all evidence based, and I can tell you that people are not happy. I mean, like what Sim was saying, that of course he's getting it from his constituents and
Yeah.
also from others. Whoever comes to complain to us, we ask them to go into our portal. So we have the evidence to say that, especially on terms of SOPs, when you are the lack of disclosure when people are signing up on their insurance policies.
Absolutely.
Until today, we are having that problem. Why? Why are they having? If you're saying that you are educating consumers, why are these problems still happening? And when they actually end up having the policy after signing, then it's about 30-page document, all written by a lawyer from the insurance industry, not
Small
understanding.
font.
Small
Yes,
print.
yes.
Yeah.
So why can't we make it better? Why can't we make it easily understood by ordinary consumers? Because we are putting our life savings, as you said, this is coverage, we're putting our life savings, and as what Sim said, after 21 years, 20 years of paying, and then you don't get anything.
Right.
So where, it's unfair. So I think there has to be some sort of reform in
True.
that whole industry.
You're absolutely right. I think this discussion today has shown us that a holistic way is the one that we need to do, because like what Sim was talking about, we need to own our own health. We need to ask the questions, and the people that I have communicated with in the past couple of weeks, preparing for this, talking about this, people who have bought policies don't even know what they've bought. Hospitals are unaware. I mean, all around the industry, there has been, for want of a better word, abuse. There's been abuse, for want of a better word, right? Because of this misinformation or disinformation, whatever you want to call it.
Can
there's a
I
lack.
add one last point? Sorry, I make it too long.
No,
The
go ahead.
Public Accounts Committee has decided to look into this holistic private healthcare sector,
Mhm.
and then we are going to have public hearings and as well as proceedings to look into a holistic reform and suggest to the and table in the parliament. So what we're going to do is, because your podcast is mostly what they call healthcare
Sure. Yeah.
people. So first is that we're going to have it in February, a public hearing. So we will get all the people who wants to complain, people who have problems, come. Insurance company, consumer associations, whatever. We'll do a public hearing. Let 3 hours in Parliament. Let you speak, and it all will be recorded. And then after that, we'll go into about 8 to 10 proceedings. Very detailed.
Okay.
We'll ask different sectors. We'll get Bank Negara and the government to come and present to us how they're going to reform this. We're going to listen to your insurance company. We'll ask the Liam, and then we'll get CEO of whatever insurance companies come and tell us how you're going to do things, how you want to suggest reform. And then we'll get private hospitals. We'll get Dr. Kuj to come also.
Okay.
And he will have to say how he's going to control all these things for us. And then we'll get also academicians to come and give suggestions. And eventually we'll come out with a big, thick report and table in Parliament. That's what we're going to do.
Right.
So because we want something to be done. It has to stop now. No more. I mean, we can discuss and talk until the cow comes home.
Yep.
But there's not going to do something. And
Right.
I'm pushing for that.
Fantastic. I mean, because obviously the ball has been kicked down the road all this way, and then we're sitting here now. It's on our court, right? We need to do something with it. And well, I tell you, I mean, this has been really invigorating, fantastic, great conversation. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Indrani. Thank you so much, Sim, to being a part of this Healthcare Simplified. I hope that this is just the top of the level, just the top, right? We've got more to unpack. Stay with us, be with us. We will be having more of these kinds of discussions, and I hope that we'll be invited to be a part of that PAC Public Accounts Committee as well, to be able to share with people what actually is happening, how they can participate, how they can come into Parliament, how they can come in with groups, and with FOMCA, all these things, and put together a holistic idea that can get us out of this. It's not going to be a quick fix. We all know this. It's taken 20, 30 years to get here. It's not going to take a year to get us out. Right. We can understand that, but together we can at least see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then maybe go towards it. And like you said, Sim, I mean, I thank you so much, because we need a lawmaker who's going to push this. We need someone who feels that this is what you're going to do, and you're young enough to look at yourself to be in this country for the next 30 years and be alive, because there's sometimes too many old people
I find I'm fighting a losing war.
Well, we'll be here. We'll fight with you.
We have to be optimistic. We have to be positive.
Yes, we have to be positive. I mean, we have to try to do what we can with the time we have. Thank you so much, Dato Indrani. Thank you so much, YB Sim. Thank you so much, Mark. It's been great. Thank you so much for being a part of this Healthcare Simplified with Manvir Victor. We'll be back soon with some more for you. Thank you. Bye.